Mate, look what happened to Blockbuster. Look what happened to the taxi industry. Look what happened to Kodak. Like, eventually they get disrupted. How long is it going to be before you go down to a shopping centre and you don't see big banks anymore? Big leases in those centres, I don't think it's going to be there. They don't know that, 97, 98% of the Bitcoin that will ever exist has already been mined. They don't know that the 4 million Bitcoin out of the 21 million has kind of been lost forever. What happens if something happens to you? Who's going to get my Bitcoin? Can my kids? Can my wife? Can my spouse? Can my family? Sift through all of the info that's out there and just bring it to a place where it's digestible. Absolutely transformational, liberating, and that's the true path to self-sovereignty. When you understand that you have this value and take it anywhere in the world, the most liquid asset on earth, exchange value, and if you need to exchange a little bit back for fiat, so be it. But to me, that's true wealth, true self-sovereignty. It's a truly transformational thing.
G'day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to G'day Bitcoin. Today we've got another Aussie, Zane, joining us on the podcast. We're going to dive into a whole lot of stuff. Bitcoin, Citadels, AI, how much Bitcoin you need to retire, what the 3 threats are to your wealth and sovereignty. We need to have a very serious conversation about CBDCs. And we're going to talk about AI and the great harvest. Zane, welcome to the show. How are you today, mate?
Great to be here, Sean. I really appreciate the invitation, mate. Looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, really looking forward to jumping into a rip. I think where we should probably start off straight away is the 3 threats to wealth and sovereignty. What are they? Why does it matter? Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Look, I think we're in changing times. I think that's the reality of it. And, if we just look at the past 5 years and how much has really changed in people's lives, if they've been kind of paying attention to their grocery bills and their petrol prices and their rents and cost of living and all of these kinds of things. And, the reality, I think, for most people, Sean, is that, they don't really understand what's causing all of this. They can see there's a problem. And, I guess there's a faction of society, probably the top 5%, who have done really well over the past 5 years through inflation. But if people could only understand that, really, I guess the greatest threat to our wealth and sovereignty is inflation, and it's not CPI like they tell us. They tell us that 3 to 4% CPI, price of eggs going up by 30 or 40 cents a year and all that sort of stuff. If people only knew that that's not true inflation. True inflation is defined as the rate of monetary expansion. And I know you're a huge fan of people like, Lawrence Lepard, and you're a big fan of his new book, The Big Print. And I encourage people to read that too. So it really, I guess, goes into great detail as to how we've arrived at this situation, how everything has been accelerated. Firstly, post-GFC, the global financial crisis back in 2008, when they instituted QE, quantitative easing, and then, the pandemic comes along, and what did they do again? They shut everyone's businesses down and people couldn't go to work. There was no productivity anywhere. And they flooded the system with liquidity. And of course, where did all that money go? It found its way into real estate and stocks and cryptos and a whole bunch of other things, but primarily real estate. And of course, this is just driving a growing wealth gap, and such that the next generation, in my mind, is really up against it when it comes to living the great Australian dream, getting a foothold in the market, planning for themselves. This has massive implications on the family unit. I've got 3 daughters in their 20s, so I would consider one of the last generations that was able to do this reasonably comfortably. But these kids coming through now, mate, they've got no hope unless they get help from, those above them, the bank of mum and dad, or get an inheritance, and it's all due to inflation. And so I know we're going to dive into that. The other one, of course, is, I guess, there's an attack. I would say probably the right way to explain it is an attack on our retirement savings. When we consider that what's proposed right now as far as tax on unrealised gains, I think that we all should be concerned about that as Australians, and not just think that, oh, that's just a tax on the rich,
Yeah.
because we know it's not indexed for inflation. And so in 20 years, everybody's going to be basically caught up in this. And also we had a cyber attack on big industry super funds, I think 2 or 3 months ago. It was all over the news. And so that's a concern. That's a threat to our future wealth and sovereignty in my mind. And then probably the third thing is this pending central bank digital currency framework that is coming. And we don't really know when that's coming to Australia. All we know is that it's coming to Europe in October this year. And what we know is that Australia is very much plugged into the globalist agenda. And if this rolls out in Europe, there's a really good chance it'll come here. And most people don't realise that central bank digital currencies at their core are essentially surveillance money, tied to your credit score, tied to your carbon credits, how much you travel, all of these kinds of things. And so, I just think that we're at a time now where we need to be paying attention, and Bitcoin is really front and center in all of this as a solution.
Mate, I completely agree. Bitcoin's the solution. I want to dive into the CBDCs. It's something that, I've been raising the alarm about for a couple of years. The Reserve Bank of Australia has been actively working, researching CBDCs for a very long time. They're well ahead, and they promote it. Just for everyone, Google RBA, central bank digital currencies, and they'll talk about it. They say they have no plans to implement it. And if they did implement it, they don't know if it'd be retail or institutional only. But, that's just gaslighting. And they talk about these CBDCs, that they're faster, it's easier and stuff. But like you're saying, they're a system of surveillance and carbon credit scores, kind of like what's happening in China. People like, that'll never happen here in Australia. We're the lucky country. We're a free country. But if we look at the last five years, Victoria had the worst lockdowns in the world. Like, this is a lucky country? Fuck, maybe it used to be. But then, like, when you look at house price inflation, etc., the average house price is $1 million. When they have these CBDCs and they get rid of cash, and the agenda to get rid of cash in Australia has been going on for a very long time, people are absolutely fucked. You'll own nothing and be happy. That's what the World Economic Forum is pushing out as an agenda by 2030. So when's it going to happen in Australia? My guess, 2030. If not before, and pretty quick. And by that time, I think it's too late. But with CBDCs, like, all our money's digital anyway. Very few people use cash. What do you see the differences between just the digits in a bank and then a CBDC? Is it just that they've got another level of control and they can change it? Some people can get negative interest rates. Other people can have positive interest rates. They can just deduct things at will. Or what are your thoughts in regards to them, and why they could be a bad thing? And maybe, just as a caveat, maybe the worst never happens. Great, like that's cool. But I'd rather be aware and do what I can to be able to plan in case that happens.
Yeah, and we don't know exactly the ins and outs of how a system like this is going to work. But, I guess if you're starting to download or you get asked to download an app with the Reserve Bank of Australia, or whatever the central bank is of the jurisdiction that you're in, it really just is a segue to them being able to essentially surveil every transaction. I guess whenever your taxes are due, reach into your account and grab them without you, planning to repay them. I mean, even in this country still at the moment, you can, if you end up with an unexpected tax bill that you didn't budget for, you can still put it on tick and gradually take care of it. And so those kinds of things, and then this whole push towards green energy, restrictions on potentially how much you travel due to carbon credits and all of those kinds of things. So I just think it's a way for them to tie it to your digital ID and then create frameworks which eventually may lead to restrictions as to how you live your life. And I think when we start to quarantine people's money, I think that is the beginning of true dystopia. You know, when you can't tip a babysitter without somebody knowing, or you know, pay your gardener, 50 or 60 or $70 cash or whatever it might be for doing your lawn, or without somebody knowing about it. I think that's kind of the beginning of the end when it comes to personal privacy. So that's how I see it. And we see, like in Europe right now, in Spain as an example, I mean, the writing's already on the wall, but we're also seeing it in Australia with our banks as well. But, there's a case that's becoming quite well known in Spain now. The government's put out essentially a mandate. It's a notice of cash withdrawal statement, where if you go into a bank and you intend to withdraw any more than 3,000 euros, you need to report it to the tax agency at least 24 hours in advance, right? And if you don't do that, then you run the risk of $150,000 or euro fine. And so, I'm not sure what you think about that, mate, but for me, that's a big issue. That's a big red flag. And you and I both know people who have, even in this country, go down to the bank, try and get 2, 3, 4, 5 grand out in cash. 9 times out of 10, they're going to send you away and say, look, we don't either have it today, or they're going to ask you a bunch of questions as to why you're withdrawing it and what's the purpose and that. And so this is kind of where we are now. So, we're also seeing the issue with people trying to get money out of their banks to onboard into Bitcoin. I consult with a lot of people in this space, and I try to send them in certain directions where that, so far, touch wood, is less of an issue in terms of onboarding. But a lot of the exchanges now, it's a problem. So, mate, it's just a situation of red flags right now, where if we're paying attention, we can start to organise ourselves in a better way. And I think the best way of all is to be learning about Bitcoin, studying Bitcoin, developing your conviction in Bitcoin. Because at the end of the day, I think it's the only truly decentralized monetary protocol that we can rely on as we move forward into this crazy, uncertain time.
Yeah, I agree with that, and maybe just to be able to tack on, ladies and gentlemen, please hold your Bitcoin in self-custody. If it's on an exchange, it's in the ETF or whatever. It's not going to serve you. It's not going to help you. It's not freedom technology in that situation. But when you do hold it in self-custody, you're a free, sovereign individual when you set it up right and you do the right things. Talking about freedom and stuff, I want to come back to this. But before we move on, and then we'll come back, just in regards to the bank. So like Commonwealth Bank here in Australia limits to $10,000 a month that you can go out to Bitcoin or crypto. They just blanket it, which is pretty annoying. And then like 4 weeks ago, it took me like 4 days to be able to get $2,100 out of the banks through the ATMs. It was absolutely insane, and for no reason. At all. I don't know what was going on, if the ATM didn't have much money in it or whatever. It's like, sorry, you can't get out that much. Like, this is what you can get out. You're like, what? And, just had to keep going back. So it feels like those capital controls are already here, but we'll come back to that. I want to talk about what you're doing with the Citadels. A lot of Bitcoiners talk about, we're going to stack sats and chill. In a couple of years' time, we're going to build a Citadel, and a Citadel is usually like a fortress, gulch, place hidden away from the authorities and, from the sheeple, and where you've got like-minded people. But in your case, you're doing the Citadel a little bit different. It's up and running now. What's that about? Maybe describe how different to like bricks and mortar Citadel and how it's a benefit. If you've still got your Bitcoin on an exchange or you're looking to take your Bitcoin security to the next level, I've partnered with the Bitcoin Way. They offer live help for setting up cold storage, running your own node, keeping your Bitcoin private, planning for the future, using multi-sig, and so much more. They never touch your keys. They will not touch your coins. Instead, they'll show you how to buy and keep them safe. If you want to make your Bitcoin setup safer, you can book a free 30-minute call and have a chat with them. Safety Moose, the author of the Bitcoin Standard, Natalie Brunel, Preston Pish, and so many more recommend the professional IT cybersecurity team. Couple of outstanding things here. You can see they've been featured in Forbes, Bitcoin Magazine, Bitcoin Prague, Zero Hedge, Simply Bitcoin, the Bitcoin Safe Dean, the Bitcoin Standard podcast with Safety Moose, Bitcoin News, obviously G'day Bitcoin for a long time. They're the world experts in helping people become self-sovereign. It's not just about protecting your Bitcoin stash. Yes, they will help you do that in a very easy to understand step-by-step process. But from there, they can help you secure your data. They are your personal cybersecurity IT experts. And then step number 3 is getting a second passport, a Plan B residency. The team, very cheap, very affordable for people that are looking to take their sovereignty to the next level. You can find out more about their services. When you first log in to their website as well, they have got a free 3-minute quiz to allow you to check if you are doing your cybersecurity, your setup correctly. I urge everyone to jump onto the bitcoinway.com. I have put a link into the description for everyone. Could not recommend them enough. I've used them personally before I ever partnered with them for the channel, friends and family. They asked me to help them out. I'm like, go to the world experts. That is the Bitcoin Way. So reach out to the Bitcoin Way today.
Kidding themselves. I mean, that this is going to be a transition for the ages. It just has to be, I mean, and so, in that environment, I just think that, it's all about building a community of like-minded people, share ideas, support each other, ride out the storm, so to speak, when people are kind of feeling a bit down in the dumps, or they're giving up on Bitcoin, or they think Bitcoin's giving up on them. It's just an opportunity to say, hey, it's all good. You're on the right track. You've got your sats, you've got it in self-custody. You're doing the next steps, towards self-sovereignty, and you're on the right path. And so for me, it's just really about creating a community of like-minded people where we get together on a regular basis and, really support one another on this journey, because I just believe that Bitcoin is a journey that is really difficult to just do on your own. Yeah. And you wouldn't believe the amount of people I meet every single month who book one-on-one calls with me, and people from all walks of life, and they don't really know where to go for information, So even though there's so much information out there, the reality is, unless you've got, a lot of time on your hands to sift through it all and find your people and find the answers and do your own research, and most people just don't have that time these days. Yeah. So that's really the reason why I've set this up, Sean, and we've only just launched it last week, and welcomed our first bunch of members on board, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to build it, because I just think there's a real need out there, and particularly in Australia, probably 95% of the people I talk to are all around Australia. People just feel like they need a home, an emotional home, a psychological home, connection home, a friendship home, centered around Bitcoin. So that's what it's all about.
And how exactly does it work, Zane? So like before we went live, you're saying that you just meet once a month, but do you just have groups where people can interact between that time frame? Do you get on video calls and stuff? And like sort of what's involved, and how do you bring that community together?
Yeah, so, for me, it's all about getting from point A to point B, and really the goal, certainly in my mind, and the message that resonates with me most in Bitcoin is moving towards self-sovereignty. And self-sovereignty is kind of a broad term that can mean different things to different people, right? I mean, we can go all the way and sort of say, stuff Australia, it's becoming too untenable to live here, and we can go and live in, on the other side of the world with a Plan B passport and residency and all of that kind of thing. And that's probably at the extreme. But I still think that in these times that we're in as Bitcoiners, if we're really leaning into this in a big way, and we've got a meaningful amount of our financial life stacked here, we need to. Nothing's off the table in my mind in regards to that. And so, it's just a process of, understanding exactly what this asset is, what the fundamental inner workings of Bitcoin as a protocol are, so that because interestingly enough, a lot of people don't even really understand that there's 100 million satoshis per Bitcoin. Simple things like that. They don't know that 97, 98% of the Bitcoin that will ever exist has already been mined. They don't know that 3 to 400 million, 3 to 4 million Bitcoin out of the 21 million has kind of been lost forever. Through various things that have taken place over the years, and just little things like that, and understanding the process of getting, onboarded into Bitcoin, getting your money from a bank account into an exchange or a full service brokerage, getting it from the exchange into self-custody, making sure you've got the right self-custody solution, Bitcoin only, air-gapped, open source, these kinds of little things that most people would consider to be probably advanced steps, or steps that maybe sound confusing in the beginning. And so it's just a matter of getting people fully versed in all of the steps so that they can decide how far they want to take it. And so the way I've put this together is really a combination of access to me. I get people who I met 3 months ago who constantly are asking me questions on the fly about this and that, and what do I think about this, and is this the right setup for that? And I'm always helping people out in that way. But it's ongoing connection with me. It's monthly Zoom calls where we get together as a group, share ideas, generally a theme around each monthly call. We do that on Zoom, so it doesn't matter where people are. And then we've put together a 2-day live boot camp where we essentially cover 6 modules of training over 2 days. Everything from fundamentals, mindset, basics of self-custody, hot wallets versus cold wallets, understanding why you would consider running your own node, understanding layer 2 solutions such as Lightning, and then maybe setting up a succession plan if you're doing Bitcoin the way Bitcoin was intended, which is self-custody. A lot of people, one of their biggest concerns is, and I know this was for me, what happens if something happens to you? Who's going to get my Bitcoin? Can my kids? Can my wife? Can my spouse? Can my family? And so it's really the full gamut, Sean, of things that a 1-hour conversation is not enough for people to get that depth of understanding. And unless they go on a hunt for information and they have the time to do what I've done over the past 6 years and sift through all of the info that's out there and just bring it to a place where it's digestible, then it's a tough deal, for most people. And so that's what it's all about, mate.
I think that's absolutely awesome. I've got a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek question. Between your wife and your spouse, who's ending up with the Bitcoin?
Well, if something happens to me, mate, it's not even her that's getting it.
Yeah, cool.
Because she just like, don't involve me in this, even though she loves what it's all about in terms of being responsible for what we know is access to the keys. You just have to have somebody who's happy to take on that role. That's all.
Yeah, somebody that you need to be able to trust. But Zane, in regards to the Citadel, I'll put that link below. for everyone. I really want to be able to come back to inflation in Division 296, but something that's really quite interesting to me, and I'm working very intensely with it, is AI. I spend like 4 hours a day using AI, working with it, predominantly coding, setting up automations and stuff with our training website. But you're reading Adam Livingston's book at the moment, The Great Harvest. You said it's absolutely blown your mind. I haven't had the chance to read that book yet. Probably be 2 books time. I'll get around to it. But sort of, what's the gist of it, and like what's coming? And I guess because Adam Livingston, he's a Bitcoiner, he's talking about Bitcoin and AI sort of coming together. It'll be good for some people, and bad for other people. Sort of, what are your takeaways and what are your thoughts in regards to AI at the moment, especially of a different generation? You didn't really grow up like I grew up with computers and everything like that. It's sort of just natural for me, but it's more like a concentrated effort for someone within your demographics to be paying attention to something like AI and even Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think that AI is going to be very, very disruptive. I mean, at its core, from what I can gather, because I'm only sort of about halfway through Adam's book. I believe it only came out a couple of weeks ago, but at its core, it just talks about how many professions and labor-intensive jobs and service-based industries, etc., they're going to become essentially obsolete, and professions that we would probably consider to be even legacy professions that have been around, forever and a day. The likes of the legal profession, as an example, the accounting profession, and unless they really start to adapt their business models, a lot of them are going to be by the wayside. And so, it's a fascinating thing to consider, because we already kind of, I think, intuitively can feel how AI is, it's a tool which we can use to our advantage, because it can really speed things up in terms of our productivity and our output. But there's no substitute for human interaction and human connection, regardless of how far this goes into robotics and the like. But I just think that it's all about paying attention to a lot of those service-based industries, professions that could potentially be disrupted in a big, big way by AI. I mean, when you consider things like contracts, for example, and conveyancing, and how AI and even applications that the likes of ChatGPT, and you put in like a dummy version of a contract or something like that, at what it spits out for you, and just gives you all the answers. It's like, where is all this going to lead? Is it going to actually obsolete all of the middlemen that aren't productive? Anyone who's in the middle, maybe brokerage professions, real estate profession, conveyancers, legal profession, accountants. So anyone who's in that unproductive sector, because at the end of the day, they're not really generating anything productive for society. They're just, and it's not sort of a knock on those industries. They are what they are. But I'm just saying, in terms of actually adding value to society, in terms of enabling us to move forward, they're more of a service that we use because we need them. You know what I'm saying? Rather than one that we not that we need, a service that we require because of the construct that we're in.
Yeah.
Rather than, if we had a choice, well, we'd never use an accountant, or we would never use a lawyer, right? But we only use them because the construct requires us to do so at certain times in order to comply. And so, with all of that in mind, it's like, from what I'm getting from Adam's book, is that at the end of the day, it's going to also disrupt how we perceive value, and how we're actually prepared to receive value. So, if we see with inflation and disruption to all of these professions, we're going to start to question, well, what is money and what is it that we're happy to earn? And a lot of people are going to say, well, I'm not actually prepared to, work for dollars anymore. And so at its core, Bitcoin will become the new value system in amongst all of this. And this is what people are going to want. And so, mate, it's tough to get your head around in short time. It's something that requires a lot of contemplation, and I don't have all the answers yet, but it's certainly opening up a lot of thought process for me as to where we're going in the next. I think in the next 3 to 10 years, I think it's going to be a very disruptive time.
I definitely agree, and like it just accelerates, and like to drive home one of your points, like it could replace real estate. Now I brought on Mel and Trudy, who live in Victoria. They had a house, they had a block in Ballarat, I believe, in Victoria. And they wanted to sell it, and they wanted to sell it to be able to get Bitcoin. So they're like, shit, we're just going to sell it for Bitcoin. And they made national news and stuff. And I reached out and got them on. Shout out to good mate Rory for putting us in contact and making that happen. Absolute legend. But when they came on, I'm like, how'd you go about it? And they're like, well, we used AI to be able to find out what to do and where to be able to post and how to do it all. So they didn't even need to have a real estate agent involved. Like, whole profession obsolete. And I'm not sure whether they ended up settling in fiat or Bitcoin. And maybe as fiat, they just would have put it into the bank and put it into Bitcoin. That's their end goal. But say it was Bitcoin. You've taken out the real estate agent. You've taken out the bank. You've taken out all the solicitors, the accountants, like everything. It's just all gone. And that's just one person or like one couple in one transaction. It happens more and more and more and more. And it's a snowball. And like, before we went live, I was saying like Bitcoin dipped. It's 101,762 right now, but like in the last 24 hours, down to 98,700 and something dollars. And I'm like pulling my hair out because I've got zero fiat dollars to be able to buy the dip, and it's just because it's a red day, and I'm like so frustrated, and I'm like trying to call in contracts and stuff, and it's just not happening. It'll probably be higher, and then I'll buy it and repeat. I don't really care what the price is. But there's already people that are just totally living on Bitcoin, may still earn fiat. Like I earn fiat dollars and I use that for all my expenses, everything. And I sort of know what they are. I'll give myself a little bit of a buffer. Maybe it should be a little bit bigger sometimes, because you start to get to the end of the week and you're like, maybe I put too much to Bitcoin or whatever. You're like escaped that one, and then it's just all into Bitcoin. But I think more and more people are going to demand to be paid in Bitcoin. Like when I get the videos and stuff edited, I pay for it in Bitcoin, and those people want Bitcoin. Or if I'm paying for someone and something, like I would rather pay them in Bitcoin just because I know it's better money and it's better for them. And a lot of people now are like, no, I'll take the dollars. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, do you really want this worthless crap? And they're like, yes. I'm like, okay, like have it, like your loss. I'll keep the sats, and I just would have changed the fiat into Bitcoin anyway. But I feel bad giving people cash now, or like not like cash, just fiat dollars, like even if it's bank to bank. It's insane. It doesn't really take that long for that mind shift to happen. But sticking back, like on being different demographics, what was it that woke you up to Bitcoin?
It's a really good question. I've tried to actually retrace whether there was a defining moment where I said, no, this is for me. It was more of a gradual process, Sean. I mean, I've always been very inquisitive when it comes to, creating wealth, finance, new technologies, all of those kinds of things. And I've always been, someone who would proactively go and try and learn more about something if it sort of piqued my interest. And what's interesting about Bitcoin for me is that in 2013 I first heard about it, and I kind of think you may have said the same thing a couple of times. And I don't know,
Yeah,
it was something
it's
about
$96.
it was something about that bloody year where everyone was talking about Bitcoin. right? Because it happened on more than one occasion. It was like, at the time I was flat out with my business and we were traveling everywhere, and someone was sort of a colleague of mine was just, mate, you've got to take a look at this bloody Bitcoin thing. And I'm like, dude, what is it? What is it? And he just kept pestering me about it, and I kept fobbing him off. And, I didn't think I needed it. It didn't make sense. The 5 minutes I spent on it, it was so over my head, and that I absolutely just didn't really give it another thought. And then I think it was 2017. I ended up on a mailing list with a group out of Melbourne called Fat Tail Media, and I think it might have been a share trading publication that I'd signed up to a couple of years prior to that, and then they had this gentleman by the name of Sam Volkering, and he became sort of quite a well-known writer from Australia in the cryptocurrency space, and his early publications were centered primarily around Bitcoin. And I just started reading it all and sort of read the white paper and just thought, shit, this sounds really quite interesting. And then that led me to read Seyfuddin Amousa's book, The Bitcoin Standard. And then in January 2019, I actually took the first step to actually grabbing my first bag of sats. And I think I was telling you offline that, a couple of weeks after that, the bloody market tanked by about 30%. But what's interesting is, like, because I'd already done probably, I don't know, 3 to 6 months worth of study, I had enough understanding to know that I wasn't going to get shaken out. And I really used that opportunity as just, jumping in and lowering my dollar cost average entry point. And, it's just been a journey ever since, Sean. I think since 2020, I've really started to dive a lot deeper. That's really, I guess, for most people, was a wake-up call time where we knew things weren't right. And I used that as an opportunity to really go on a hunt for learning when it comes to Bitcoin, and doubling my conviction, pouring more into it. COVID was a very disruptive time for us too, because we'd had a business that involved running seminars around the country, so live events. We'd done that since 2006. So the best part of 15 years, that was our business. And then, of course, when you couldn't travel, which we thought was going to be just for a couple of months, had a lot of pre-sold events. We had to refund and cancel, and it was just a nightmare. So,
ouch.
So out of that, it just really sent me on a journey for learning and understanding what the true meaning of self-sovereignty is, and the separation of money from state, fix the money, fix the world, really understanding the history of money, inflation, all of those kinds of things.
Yeah. And like, obviously something you said, like reading the books, I absolutely love it. Read the books, read the bugs. But since like getting in, since I think it's on page, Parallel's a really good book for everyone to be able to read, but it is by author Brian D. Mint, page 157. That's my claim to fame. Read the books, read the bugs. It made it into the book. He's like, can I add that? I'm like, absolutely. I think it's the most important message in the world. I get everyone doesn't read, so listen to an audio book, the big print Parallel. You're absolutely welcome. But podcast, but for yourself, Zane, being in 2017, you're really curious, you did a whole lot of study, and by that time you'd already spent 6 months studying. Do you still put effort and energy into studying Bitcoin daily, weekly, monthly, or you don't bother anymore, you think you know enough? Like, what's that ongoing learning journey for you?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I reckon I'm a 3. Like seriously, and I know that might sound crazy for someone who's been in this space for 70, but I just think there's so much to learn in this space. I mean, I never stop learning. Every day I learn something new. I I've always been a great student. Obviously in Bitcoin, you find your favorites, people who you resonate most with in terms of their message. Probably these days, I'm the two guys I love to listen to the most are Jeff Booth and Tony Yazbek. And the reason I love those guys so much is because they talk about and really drum home the point that a lot, unfortunately, has been lost in Bitcoin in many ways, I believe. And that is that Bitcoin is not just a store of value. Bitcoin is also a medium of exchange and a unit of account. And you only need to read the first line of Satoshi's white paper from 2008, and what does it say? It says peer-to-peer, electronic cash. And unfortunately, the narrative in Bitcoin over the past 5 to 10 years has got a little bit convoluted, I believe, and moved more towards it's only a store of value, never sell your Bitcoin, it's pristine collateral, it's digital gold, it's digital Manhattan, all of these things, which I 100% do agree with. But I also believe that we have to understand that it is also built for peer-to-peer value transfer.
Yeah.
And this is the point that I think a lot of people still don't yet understand, because unless you've actually ever transferred value between yourself and somebody else in a frictionless way, which is what Bitcoin enables you to do, and you compare that to sending value through the fiat system and the traditional banking system, it's just chalk and cheese. And because most people who are treating Bitcoin as purely as a savings technology and a store of value and parking, however much of their financial life into it, they're missing out on that other part that is, I believe, absolutely transformational, liberating, and that's the true path to self-sovereignty. When you understand that you have this value in your back pocket, 12-word seed phrase, 24-word seed phrase, whatever it is that you can essentially memorize in your head and take it anywhere in the world, the most liquid asset on earth, and exchange value. And if you need to exchange a little bit back for fiat, so be it. But to me, that's true wealth, true self-sovereignty. It's a truly transformational thing. So, I'm not sure if I even answered your question there, but I can't remember what you asked. But,
You're still studying Bitcoin, and clearly you are. But I think like the tangent you went off on, I want to follow that a little bit more. I was meant to pay someone $250 cash today, and I totally forgot about it. And like last week I said, can I pay you in Bitcoin? No answer, no response to it. And then today I said, hey, forgot to pick up the cash from the ATM. I'll get it to you tomorrow, unless you want Bitcoin. I can transfer it right now. And they're like, oh, I still need to find out how to do it. I'm like, I can show you in 2 to 3 minutes to be able to do it. Like, it's that freaking simple. You're going to end up with better money. Bitcoin's down. It's cheap. So like in a week, 2 weeks, whatever, by the time this podcast comes out, you're probably going to make more fiat dollars on that already. But like, it's not almost even worth my time going out of the house, going to the ATM, going back to be able to drop it off, where I could just pull it out, send it right now, and then like be done with it, and it's not a thought or something that I need to set a reminder for or to be able to remember. It just makes it like so easy, and it's cash, but it's just digital cash. And then the other thing in regards to like, it's gone convoluted. I'm on both sides. Like, I think first, when people get into Bitcoin, the mindset should be Bitcoin as a store of value, because most people have no savings. They're living broke. So like, if you're saving $5 a day, $10 a day, $50 a week, whatever it is, $500 a week, like whatever it is, and just store week in, week out. And if you can do that for 4 years, and then like leave that stack, and that's just savings, that's just store of value for a rainy day. But then from there, still keep adding to that stack, but throw a little bit into your hot wallet and use it as spendings and use it as a medium of exchange. And like, to be able to pay for things overseas, like I've got a custom BitX coming with my G'day Bitcoin logo and stuff, other side of the world, printed. Like, to be able to do a fiat payment, to be able to make that happen, would have cost more, it would have taken longer for them. And the funniest thing about it was, I was like, guys, can you send me the invoice already? And the next week, I'm like, can you send me the invoice already? And then I asked them again, I'm like, seriously, guys, like, the longer you leave it, the cheaper this thing is getting for me. I'd advise you to send me the Bitcoin invoice. And then they sent it to me straight away. And then Bitcoin kept going up after that. So that's the power. But it's just like, it's just one and done. They send you a code or like the public address, copy it, done, and that's it. Instantly, they've got it. It's absolutely amazing. And set up a couple of shops and stuff where I live locally. And so I'll be talking to people, and they're like, "Where can you even spend Bitcoin?" I'm like, "Well, you can." Or they're like, "What can you even buy with Bitcoin?" I'm like, "You can buy anything you could think of with Bitcoin." Like, people have bought houses, cars, planes, etc., TVs, things for the studio, whatever it is, like anything. But I'm like, at the moment, like, why would you, for those like larger purchases, get rid of the fiat? But after a certain amount of time, to be able to use both and to be able to support the network, it's great. But still, and I know it's maybe not as aligned with Jeff Booth and even Tony, I think when people first get into it, save in Bitcoin. But what are your thoughts on it? Do you reckon they should just get in and they should do both, save and spend? Or how would you?
I just think short answer is yes. I think in the early stages, if you're just starting, with having a dabble, $1,000 here, $500 there, I think the idea is to just get to your some kind of a target as quick as you can. So be it 0.01, which is what, about $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. If you've got the means to get to 0.1, whatever it is where you're at, just that you feel comfortable as an entry point, I would say get to there first, so that at least you're starting to stack sats and you've got your foothold into this and you've got a seat at the table. But then I would say the next step to that is to get yourself a hot wallet and send a few sats to the hot wallet. Just that process alone, getting from cold storage into your hot wallet and just seeing that you can actually send sats to yourself, I think is a good first step. But I think that we're going to move very quickly to a point where, right now the challenge is, like you say, where do I spend my Bitcoin? And at the end of the day, yes, you can sell it back to fiat and use, like a crypto.com card or I'd never suggest sending it back to an exchange, because I know a lot of exchanges now have their own credit cards and debit cards attached to people's accounts. But there are other ways and means that you can use as an off-ramp to actually transfer some sats to fiat wherever you may be in the world, and then use a MasterCard or a Visa card as to spend. But then we see, the emergence of these applications such as Zaprite and Flash. And I'm using Zaprite myself, and it's brilliant. People have the opportunity to pay you in dollars or Bitcoin, and you can offer them a discount if they pay you in Bitcoin. And obviously, to receive Bitcoin, your customer has to already have some Bitcoin themselves. But then, with Flash, their goal is to end up with, every street corner cafe being able to, offer their customers the opportunity to pay in Bitcoin through their system. And so I think this kind of thing is going to really accelerate over the next few years. And so it won't be long before you'll actually have the opportunity to set yourself up with a Lightning wallet and go down the street and buy yourself a cup of coffee or a hamburger. I mean, we're already seeing in America, just last month, was it, that Steak and Shake, one of the biggest fast food chains in America, they serve 100 million customers a year. They're now, when you go to that panel to pay, you can either use your dollars and pay with your credit card, or you can use Lightning and pay with a QR code. And so this kind of thing is just in its infancy now, but it's all going to, I believe, become, really accelerated in the next few years.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I want to talk about Steak and Shake in a sec, just one thing on them. But for people, Bit Refill works pretty well as well. When I was over in the US and I was using Bitcoin and I couldn't pay in Bitcoin, I'd just buy I think it was a MasterCard. I don't think it was Visa. I'm pretty sure it was a MasterCard, and you just send Bitcoin to it and then you'd use it like on your phone, just like that Apple Pay, and you just put it in there. And yes, it's just a Visa card and you're spending fiat, but like it's an easy way if you've got some money on, so like Bitcoin on your phone in your hot wallet and you need to use fiat, it's just instant to be able to do it. So that's a good thing. What I found really interesting, Zane, about the Steak and Shake is they started accepting Bitcoin, but they changed their oil that they're frying in to tallow. And I think that goes to show the power of the Bitcoin community and the power of mimetic warfare. But that they cared so much about the Bitcoin community and getting those Bitcoin that they went with something that was more expensive. Yes, it's healthier and stuff, but it's really like only the small subset of the population that has any idea how bad seed oils are. And it's only due to the Bitcoin community that they've done it. Do you reckon more and more people are going to bend the knee? Like we even saw Trump to an extent bend the knee to the Bitcoin and, lesser extent, the crypto community. Australia hasn't gone down that at all, it's a fucking joke here. But politics here is a joke. But do you think we're going to see more companies, corporations, nation states and stuff doing anything possible to get on the side of Bitcoiners because they want the Bitcoin?
It's a really good question. I haven't really thought much about it, Sean, to be honest. But I guess as adoption grows, I think they're going to really want to appeal to the Bitcoin market. I mean, if I was in business, I know which I'd prefer to receive. I definitely would prefer to receive Sats over an inflationary, worthless piece of shit dollar. You know what I mean? Like essentially, I mean, I don't know what the numbers are with how much they're transacting in Sats right now, but it would be fascinating to know, how it's going and, whether or not they intend to actually stockpile their Sats or whether they intend to use it as means of payment, transfer it back to fiat. I mean, all of these things would be really fascinating to know. I guess it depends on their margins and all of those kinds of things and whether they're able to actually offload Satoshis for some of their cost base. But yeah, mate, I really think as we move forward and this whole space really accelerates, and everybody has to realize there's still less than 5% of the global population that has any exposure to Bitcoin, right? This is still such an early new space. And even though Bitcoin's been around for 16 years, it's an adolescent, it's an adolescent protocol that's going to find its way, in an accelerated form over the next, I'd say 3 to 10 years. But, I'd say we're at 1999, to draw an analogy with the internet. 1999, we were still using fax machines. We were still, writing letters to our relatives in the post for Christmas and those kinds of things. And who would have thought that we would have been doing this kind of thing we're doing now, and shopping at Amazon and back then, even though you wouldn't do it, right? Because you didn't have any confidence that you could actually put your credit card on a website and everything would be safe. And that's where we are now. And look, obviously technology has advanced so far since then. And so maybe the acceleration is not going to be 25 years. Maybe I anticipate it's going to be 5 to 10, that we're going to get to this situation where you can go down to your local coffee shop or go to Macca's. Australia is a basket case with all of this. I agree with you, because we always seem to be, sitting on the sidelines. Like, how can you come out and say what these pollies are saying about Bitcoin when America's chosen it as a strategic reserve asset? Like it makes no sense, right?
Well, it does from their point of view. They want to keep the property Ponzi scheme going. Yeah. So why would they give people another option to be able to look into?
And the big four banks are among the most profitable in the world and all of that. So they don't want, that being disrupted. But mate, look what happened to Blockbuster. Look what happened to the taxi industry. Look what happened to Kodak. All of these legacy situations that, like, eventually they get disrupted.
Yeah.
How long is it going to be before you go down to a shopping center and you don't see big banks anymore? Like, I mean, we're already seeing in our area these massive NAB banks and Westpac now, like, they're downsizing their spaces. Some of them are shutting down because nobody goes in them anymore.
Yeah.
So I would say within the next 5 years, like, the prospect of going down to your local supermarket and having a NAB and a Commonwealth Bank and a Westpac and all of that, those big leases in those centres, I don't think it's going to be there, and what we're seeing with ATMs, right? There's less and less ATMs, right? Like, so, yeah, it's just a matter of paying attention to where we're going, and who knows where Australia's going to end up with all of this, but thankfully we're still stacking sats, brother.
100%. I guess just to be able to round it out, we're not going to get into Division 296, but I've covered it ad nauseum. Basically, it's a wealth tax that is going to apply to everyone. If you don't think 3 million applies to you, sorry, inflation, it's coming. Please, as Zane was saying, read the book, The Big Print. It'll change your life. If you read it front to back, I don't care if you buy Bitcoin or not, but it's the one book that will change your understanding of what's happening. Zane, pass it over to you. I'll put all your links below where people can find you, your YouTube channel and your X. But a final message, like maybe a little bit of hope, or maybe something people should be cautious of. It doesn't matter if we've covered it or not. Just want to hand the floor over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I really enjoyed the chat. Look, I would just say, if you're sitting on the fence, not sure whether Bitcoin's for you, just do some study. Just take some time to read one book, to listen to 2 or 3 long form podcasts, and just sort of start there. And then if you learn a lot or enough from there to say, hey, this is interesting, take the next step. And that would be to just get yourself a small bag of Satoshis. You can open up an account within minutes, really. Good exchanges here in Australia, and just get used to the process and learn as you go. I think a lot of people in Bitcoin, they feel like they have to learn it all before they take that first step. But I kind of say to people, just start low and grow. Start low and grow, and just get off zero, get into the market, get yourself some sats, get it into self-custody. Doesn't need to be an elaborate setup to begin with. And then just continue your learning journey, because the more you learn, the more your conviction grows, and the more your conviction grows, the bigger and better your seat at the table is going to be in this transformational monetary protocol that is Bitcoin. So that's probably a good message to wrap on, I'd say, mate.
I love that. Start low and grow. Start low and grow. And just even to drive the point home further, you're saying like your two favorite people who you're listening to at the moment is Jeff Booth and Tony Yazbek. For me, it's Tony Yazbek and Preston Pish in the Bitcoin space, and then it's Adam Hudson, like in the Bitcoin space entrepreneurial world. They're my three go-to listens. But Tony Yazbek, founder of the Bitcoin Way, what he says is it's not hard. Like if you can ride a bike or you can drive a car, that's harder than Bitcoin. It's just steps. Like you just need to learn the process and be able to do it. So like start low and grow, like one step at a time. You don't need to get to the final result today, but you're never going to get to that final result if you do nothing. So like, please take action. But Zane, keep up the great work. I love the rip, especially when you're in your car and just giving it to it. Like what I really love about Australians and Bitcoin is there's almost like, don't need to be politically correct. You can just say it how it is, and maybe it rubs some people the wrong way or not, but it's a unique take, and it's, I think, a very grounded, realistic take. So I appreciate you and what you're doing.
Appreciate it, mate. Great to be with you, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. For everyone out there, please do something nice for yourself today. For somebody else out there, be blessed. Peace.